Gerald, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah. I'm talking to you from Jerusalem, where I've lived for the last 51 years. My background is as born as I beg your pardon. I can't take any calls now. I can't take.
But someone named Gerald is coming to see the apartment.
Fine, I can't take calls. Bye. Sorry. Everything, when it rains, it pours. Everything is happening at this moment. So we last a week or two ago, we wanted to do this also. I apologize. I was born in the States. Lived in the States. I went to MIT. The science background is the key part. Excuse me. Look, this is impossible. I'm in the middle of a video Zoom. Okay, bye. Okay, sorry. Okay, apologize for that.
No problem.
Science is the most important part for the early part. Where I went to MIT, bachelor's, master's, PhD. After that 7 years on the staff of the physics department, I've actually seen quite a few atomic bombs detonated. And anyone who's listening thinks that praying for peace or wishing for peace is adequate is foolish. I'll put it that way. You cannot imagine and these are not strategic. These are tactical bombs. They were small. Small. You cannot imagine the power of nuclear weapons unless you've experienced it. So that's my background. A lot of years at MIT, and then I've spent about 20 years actually studying this interplay between Bible and science. So when I talk about God, or the God that I'm interested in and that I relate to, is how God is described in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, the 5 books of Moses, the other writings, but primarily the 5 books of Moses. And in fact, if we're about to have Tom and I are about to have a discussion, I believe you and I are about to have a discussion. So if that's how I define the God, and I as it's described, not as I learned from a child, not what some preacher would have told me. What does the Bible say, about God in this world? And I look around the world and I see all the complexity. So I get the idea that there must be some kind of huge intelligence, which is kind of interesting, because most of the major quantum physicists say that the substrate of the universe is intelligence or wisdom. Anyway, that in the long story is my background. Can you tell me your background, Tom?
Sure. I am a full-time YouTuber. I've been a full-time YouTuber for about 5 years now. My background is mostly in philosophy. I've done some study in physics as well. I'm quite well-versed in many of the topics relating to the arguments and existence of a God. I've been an atheist for 15 years-ish. I've studied extensively on the different arguments of what can indicate a God.
I'm about to shut my phone off. Okay, the phone is now off. I apologize.
No problem. So yeah, I've studied quite a bit. I've been having conversations with professors, philosophers of all different academic fields regarding the existence of God. And my current conclusion is that none of the evidence or arguments seem to indicate a God, as opposed to a natural hypothesis. So I think the naturalism is a better explanation than a God.
So when you say you're an atheist, what do you mean? It's always important for me to define terms. What do you mean by atheist? Is it agnostic or atheist? What is an atheist?
My position...
Is an atheist certain there's no God, or is an atheist thinking, well, there's probably no God?
Most probably no God.
So you're an agnostic.
Well, no, I don't think so. Are you agnostic?
Am I agnostic? No, I would say I'm actually a person who actually feels that there must be a force greater than a physical force active in this world. We usually define it as God.
Well, sure, but do you have 100% certainty, or do you probably certain?
I would say there's nothing. Look, we never have. I hear what you're saying. So we're all agnostics, so you can never have 100% certainty. But I would say, if I had to make a bet on this, I would bet yes and not no.
Right. And so I would bet that no, I bet there is no God. So I'm an atheist. Even though I don't have 100% certainty, I'm still in the atheist camp, just like you are in the Jewish camp, I imagine.
Okay. But you're not. Are you against the idea that are you against the idea there's a God, or just don't think there's a God? Sorry, that sounds silly, but that's.
I think it would depend on which God. So I don't think there's any evidence for a God. So I think there's no reason to believe rationally. But there's certain kinds of a gods who I would be against, who I would be opposed to. The Abrahamic gods, for example, I think the stories and character portrayed in the Torah, the Quran, and the Christian Gospels is a very immoral being. And so I would be against that God, but I wouldn't be against any kind of a God in general.
Okay. Okay. It's just a force in the world. Okay. So we have our now we have our platform from which we can start. Okay, great.
Yeah. So the topic was, is science compatible with religion and God? And what is your position on that?
I've written several books. One was the largest selling book in the field of the sciences on Amazon for the entire year. It came out, called The Science of God, in which it says explicitly science and the Bible in Hebrew, Torah and Teva, they mesh, they come together. They usually, when you see conflicts between the Hebrew comes. I apologize for the Hebrew jumping out. When you see conflicts between Bible descriptions and science descriptions, it's either the person has a lot of knowledge in one field and not much in the other, or is understanding a translation and not even dealing with your actual text. So my position is, and that's, I have a video out, which we did with no script whatsoever, called Proof of God in 5 minutes. Actually, it's 5 minutes and 28 seconds, zero script beforehand. And the graphics are great. I didn't do the graphics. I don't know how to do graphics. And it has about, web-wide, it has 5 million views. Locally, it has 3.5 million views. Proof of God in 5 minutes, Gerald, Schroeder. And I don't get any money for it. I signed away my rights before I thought they would be any, even interested in it. We just did it as a lark. And so I would say that the evidence is quite strong for there being existence is one of them. I mean, how do you account for existence? That's one of the great statements of Steven Weinberg, who was famously stating that life's theme, Nobel laureate Weinberg, who says he feels life is unmeaningful. Of course, most of his secondary family was murdered in the Holocaust, so that might have affected his feelings. But in the end, he says, even if we answer all the science questions, we still don't have a answer why there is something rather than nothing. Existence is one of the big examples of the fact that there has to be existence. I mean, why is there existence? Why is there anything rather than nothing?
Well, I'd agree that's an interesting question, but how do you think God answers that question better than a different naturalistic alternative? Because it seems to me like neither answer that question. We both have to say it's just necessary.
If I look at the description of this is. I didn't realize I have some slides today. I think can you see this slide?
Yeah, picture of the Big Bang.
Okay, it's from NASA. It's directly off. This was printed out about 10 years ago. It hasn't changed one word in the last 10 years, including the new discoveries by the new telescope. And it's a time diagram: creation, universe expanding from a small point. We're out here on the oval, and this diagram says something. First of all, it tells us that guess what? I got it backwards. This is the creation going this way. Yeah, that the laws of nature, according to NASA. I don't have a background in NASA. Okay, my background's in nuclear physics. Okay, according to the national the scientists that are involved in trying to understand the history of the universe, the laws of nature predate nature. They predate our understanding of time. That's pretty interesting because that's very much that 5-minute video is totally based on this diagram. Now, the scientific community that knows this aspect of the world, and I don't pretend to, I always use their data, tells us that the universe was created from nothing, which we can't conceive of because the human mind cannot conceive of nothing. There's no way we can say nothing, but there's no black space is in nothing. Black space is space is black. So nothing doesn't fit into the human psyche. But the scientific, and that's what this is. This is nothing around this. This is a time creation. Universe expands over time. This is us out here. The laws of nature predate the universe. Essentially, all these systems that describe the creation of the universe, including that famous book called A Universe from Nothing, which is science is great in it, but the conclusion is idiotic. By Krauss, tell us that wait, Tom is doing it the correct way. Are you sitting down, Tom? I can't tell.
Yes, I'm sitting down.
Dude is a stander. That's me. That's hardcore. I don't know what that means. Tom,
they're impressed with your standing because most people sit. That's so it's not really related to the argument.
Just there are people in the world like to sit and able to stand. I sat so much we had a huge drive getting back from where we slept over last night. We being my wife and me. That I just really want to. I hope I'm not offending anyone by standing. I could easily sit down, but it's just more comfortable. Anyway, the laws of nature predate. Dude is telling us, that's me, telling us that the laws of nature predate the universe. And I'm not just saying that. The leading organization in the world that puts people in space to try to understand the history of the universe and makes a map of the universe that gets 2 people the Nobel Prize, this map right here, tells us that the laws of nature predate the universe. Now that's kind of interesting. Because as far as we understand time begins right here. Oh, that's a problem. The laws of nature create the universe, a quantum fluctuation. Who is Tom? What is his last name? It's terrible, my memory at the moment. But in any event, the scientist that first talked about that was about 50 years ago. A quantum fluctuation. That is quantum physics. That is the laws of nature. Created the universe from absolute nothing. All you need is the laws of nature. Do you understand, Tom, what that's telling us? The scientific community, not me, not you, not whoever's talking in the background or whatever, tell us the persons that deal with the origins of the universe actually get Nobel Prizes for discussing how the universe created from absolute nothing, require a system of laws. And if you look at all the descriptions that I've studied, and I don't pretend I've studied them all the descriptions of the descriptions of how the universe is created, string theory, whatever, all of them require quantum physics predating the universe. Now that's rather difficult non-theologically. That is to say, God, the God of the Bible manifests itself through the laws of nature by the statement that it says, I will be that which I will be. It's a straight statement. God self-defines God's self in the text. Not I am, I will be that which I will be. And which means that the only way you can tell there's a God is by looking around and seeing what's going on. Well, here's a big deal for what's going on. The universe is created from absolute nothing, and it requires, if you're going to get away from the word G-O-D, then you're stuck with quantum fluctuations, the laws of nature. So the fourth time, simple fact is, you got to have the laws of nature being eternal, as we define time.
So yeah, I would agree.
Nothing or creation. The Big Bang is a simple way of saying, Rembrandt's the simple way of saying creation is the Big Bang. The term the Big Bang was by Hoyle, Fred Hoyle. Fred Hoyle in the 1950s, early 1950s, was being interviewed on the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. He believed the universe is eternal. And the interviewer, to give the program a little liveliness, he said, "Well, Professor Hoyle, what do you think about your friends, your colleagues that say there was a beginning to the universe?" And he said, "They think there was a Big Bang." He coined the term in derision. I think there was a Big Bang. Or no, they think there was a Big Bang. They think there was a Big Bang. The press picked it up. And since that term, the term for the word creation in a non-theological way, because creation sounds, God forbid, like a God, is the Big Bang. The Big Bang says one thing only: there was a beginning to the universe. Nothing
Yes.
achieved.
So I would agree. I would agree that the beginning of our universe happened at the Big Bang, and the laws of physics predate that, and that quantum physics predates that. I think the consensus in physics is that space and time are emergent from other more fundamental quantum features, like you mentioned string theory or many worlds or multiverse or pilot wave theory. There's many different versions, but none of them include God. So I agree with all of the science you presented, but I don't see how any of that would indicate a God, because all of that can be explained by physics. It's not that the universe comes out of nothing. It comes out of quantum fields and other string theory and many worlds and other things that already exist. So none of the interpretations that explain the Big Bang to say that all of nature began at the Big Bang, nobody thinks that. Or that literally nothing existed before the Big Bang, nobody thinks that. They think that there was some natural thing, like Krauss's quantum fluctuations or the vacuum energy of space or something, or the possibilities of the different kinds of mathematical things that are functioning in quantum mechanics. There's always something there in nature without a God, and that something created our universe. And I think that's
Yeah.
a perfectly good explanation, that you don't need a God to explain the beginning of our universe.
Well, then what I would jump from that and say, are there any indications that that which created the universe, what force of nature or whatever, are actually still active in the universe itself? Is that which created the universe active in the universe itself?
Yes.
And there are, I mean, that would be the next step. So now we have something that's, let's say, by our definition of time, it's eternal. Okay, not infinite, but eternal, because it's just, and that would be those laws of nature. They could, but is that activating in our universe? So I have to look around the universe and see if it looks like to me that it is just random, or is it are the indications that there's something, twiddling the dials? And it looks to me like there's something twiddling the dials. Look, there's a lot of persons that say life could start randomly. A lot of persons that say life is so complex. In fact, what did Crick say? It looks almost like a miracle. He couldn't quite get the word, it is a miracle. It looks like it almost is a miracle. But what this diagram does say is something quite extraordinary. This diagram says that these laws of nature produce energy, essentially. The physical aspect, they have the time and space would take energy, light beams, super powerful light beams, not solid stuff. And then Einstein comes along and shows E equals mc squared, etc. But what this diagram says is that light beams can become alive, that light beams can feel love, because this is the only creation. Nothing else is put into this universe according to this diagram. Okay, according to NASA, put it that way. And that these light beams became so clever that they could worry about the universe, make this fantastic system here called the WMEP satellite, or whatever, a telescope. We have more telescopes out now, and those light beams became alive. Light beams have the chutzpah to feel love, joy, because everything is made physically from this burst of energy. That's pretty amazing. I never thought that a light beam could feel love, but I guess it does, because NASA told me it could.
Well, yeah, so I would agree that, yes, that the Big Bang is the origin of everything. And from that, there are emergent properties, including minds and love and compassion and thoughts. But I don't think those are any different than the other emergent properties. Like everything we see in the universe is an emergent property. Like at the Big Bang, there were no hearts, there were no lungs, there were no stars, there was no water. All of those things had to come about from combining already primordial substances, the plasma that existed at the Big Bang, in order to make these emergent, more complex things, crystals and hurricanes and tornadoes and solar systems. Like all of this is emergent from the more fundamental stuff. None of it was there originally. And
Well,
so I
wait,
don't
you
see.
only mentioned physical things. I didn't hear you mention anything that wasn't physical. I mean, the emotions that arise. I wonder if are your viewers aware of the fact that what they experience as light and what they experience as sound exists nowhere in the universe. The universe is pitch black and silent as far as the experience of light goes. Photons carry the information of light, but they're not light, or the whole air would be glowing. Only when those photons interact with the neurons in our back of our, the visual cortex, chemistry occurs, and then somehow, somewhere, that's converted into what we experience as light. But there's no light in your brain, and there's no light outside. The same as with sound. Bang, bang, molecules are moving, but the air's not booming. Only when the molecules move your eardrums. But there's no sound in your brain either. One thing I think that Cain Twitty should certainly realize that the or big egg or whatever his name that the universe, that the most common passive phenomena that we experience, sound and light, touch is active, we have to do it, doesn't exist anywhere in the physical universe. There's neither what we experience sound or what we experience as light anywhere in the universe. It's only somewhere in our mind, or no one even knows where it is. But that's, in other words, there are things that are you say emergent, but they're not emergent in the physical world. Light is not emergent in the physical world. The universe is pitch black.
Well, I'm an identitarian, so I think that the physical brain and consciousness are synonymous. But I don't see, even if we grant we don't know what causes those things, say they're just an unknown in the universe, why would saying that there's a God be a better explanation than saying it's an unknown natural cause? Because as far as I can tell, just the fact that we don't know.
And now the example I have would have to be one in which I have to pick out a definition of the God. So the only God that I work with, or deal trying to understand, is the God of the Hebrew Bible. Okay, and it's got a track record. It said there was a small group of people ages ago that suddenly became, et cetera, and that small group of people did suddenly become ages, if I showed. It describes in 30 sentences the flow of life from the creation to humanity. Now, you only get 31 sentences in the creation chapter of Genesis, but those stages are exactly what science says happened. So it has I say that the Bible has a track record. As soon as you understand it and what it says, a straight question, Tom, do you read Hebrew?
No.
So you can't. So there's no argument. I mean, there's no discussion here because you don't know the Bible. Okay, I'll put it so. So that's a problem. That's so often the case that people find a conflict with the text itself. Like the late Stephen Jay Gould, a wonderful human being. He died several years ago of cancer. He and we knew each other. We weren't close friends. We were colleagues. I was at MIT. He was at Harvard. So you separated by 3 miles. And he's proud of saying that his family served the temple, and he could prove, and I only read these writings, by the way, after he was dead. I'm so sorry, but he could prove the Bible wasn't by God using his field. Now, he's a paleontologist. Gould said, quoting from text on days 4 and 5 of the phenomena happening, and he said, but that's wrong. We know scientifically that what's mentioned on 4 happened on 5. The sequence is out of order. The sad thing was, as brilliant as he was criticizing a text he couldn't even read. He was reading it in English. And in English, it's quite true. The Bible is wrong. But in Hebrew, it's spot on. It talks about the origin of flight. That was he got wrong. And because his English translation was birds. But the Torah doesn't say birds. It says flying animals. namely the first flying animals. I'm giving you as a simple example of how the text can be understood totally incorrectly by reading a translation. For example, eye for an eye. Now, lex talionis, everyone knows eye for an eye. Oh, so eye for an eye sounds, actually, it was a breakthrough, even if it was literal. I mean, at that time where it says that in the text explicitly, it was the same for a poor man, a rich man, everyone had the same law, which, 3,500 years ago was phenomenal. But leave that aside. But why should it be an eye for an eye? First, we take it's ridiculous, because supposing a person with two eyes takes out the eye of a person with one eye. Now that person is blind. The other guy, you can take out the other person's eye and he still see. In other words, it wouldn't be it wouldn't have the parallel wouldn't be there. But there's more logic, because in the text it says, and this wound, the Hebrew is tachat, in place of this eye, in place of eye, womb in place of womb. And then you finally get to one place where it says, for murder, there's no ransom. There's murder for ransom. But if a person kills an animal, it is life for life. Now, there's no ransom for murder, but if a person kills an animal, it's life for life. Do you really think the Bible is saying if a person kills a cat, the person should die? Person kills it? Obviously not. I mean, you'd have to be silly.
What is this? How does this tie back into the evidence thing? Because my goal isn't to criticize what the Hebrew Bible says. I know that I can't read Hebrew, but if you can, then you should be able to use the Bible to tell me something about the world we don't know yet. Science does this very, very well. Science gives us novel predictions about the future.
The oldest translation, the oldest, how does he say, a commentary on Genesis chapter 1 is not in the beginning. That's totally not the Hebrew, but with wisdom, that the substrate of, and it's funny, the Christians say the same thing that John says in the beginning was the word, logos. But the Hebrew understanding, which predates John by many centuries, says the commentary is that the basis of creation is wisdom. With wisdom, God created the heavens and the earth. That's interesting, that wisdom, that sounds very much like quantum physics. The knowledge is the substrate of existence.
How does that sound like quantum physics?
It sounds like, when I get down to the basis of the physics here, I find that the universe is the expression of knowledge, of wisdom. At least that's how I see it. I don't know.
I don't understand how that sounds like quantum physics, because if it was telling me something about quantum physics, I'd want it to tell me the perturbation density of space-time, or the actual energy density of space-time, or what the fine structure constant means. Like, if it tells me those things, then yeah, absolutely. But I don't see the Bible telling us any of those things. There's lots of analogies that you can interpret to kind of make it seem like.
I guess I take an analogy. I just see, what do I see? I see the Torah, the Bible makes certain descriptions of the world, certain projections of the world, and it just seems to be that the world follows this way. I mean, most of it just is this history, but the history, I guess what you have to make it absolutely clear is proof that there was an Exodus. That's what is missing at the moment for absolute, although there are data that indicated, but I would say that I guess this would be the level at which I would be an agnostic, although I believe that it was an Exodus, but I can't prove it yet. So because the rest of the argument rests on that Exodus and the exposure at Sinai.
Well, so you mentioned a few things there I wanted to touch on. The first thing was the origin of life. I think that if we're looking at the origin of life, we're comparing, was it designed by a god, or was it a natural process? The better hypothesis is the one that can make confirmed, testable predictions to make discoveries about the field. So of what it takes to go from non-life to a living cell, there's about 10,000 different steps, and several hundred of them have been discovered and confirmed by the people who think abiogenesis is true, they said, oh, well, RNA forms corpuscles on clay and it can form self-reproducing molecules, and they discovered those things. And there's hundreds of these examples. Whereas on the design hypothesis, there are zero examples. There's zero examples of confirmed testable predictions under that hypothesis. And so I think when it comes to the origin of life, the naturalist hypothesis is better because it's actually made progress in the field. And I think the same thing would apply to origin of consciousness. When we look at which model is making predictions that can explain things about the origin of consciousness, the naturalist physicalist hypothesis is the one saying, when we do this experiment on your brain, here's the result we'll get, here's how we can do these tests, and here's how we can confirm them. And all of that progress is made by the physicalist side of the debate, not the consciousness is created by God side of the debate. So for the same reason, the origin of consciousness is better explained by a physical emergent property rather than a divine mind, for the same reason that one of those fields is making progress that's confirmed and the other one isn't. When it comes to the Exodus, I don't think any of the archaeological evidence indicates the Exodus was real as it's described in the Bible. I think that the size, I think it said like 500,000, referring to the men specifically, were moved from slaves in Egypt to the promised land over a course of 40 years. You can correct me if that's an incorrect interpretation, but
No.
I think that's factually incorrect for a number of reasons. One is that number of people would be over 60% of the entire population of Egypt, which they didn't have enough food to support. So it would be physically impossible for that many slaves to be there in the first place. Secondly, the fact that it would have taken 40 years to walk from Egypt to Jerusalem, which is like literally just a 2-week journey if you follow the coastline, doesn't make a lot of sense. There's no archaeological data of any pots, of any bones, of any cabin structures ever being found along this journey. And we can see archaeological evidence of the amount of homesteads, pots, livestock in the area of Jerusalem, both before and after the time of the Exodus was supposedly occurring. And we can see that the population density of these pots and homesteads didn't substantially increase at any point. It was a gradual increase over hundreds of years, and there was no massive tripling of the population due to millions of people transiting there. That just didn't happen. And so the archaeological evidence doesn't seem to support anything like the Exodus. Moses, I believe, the consensus in history is that Moses was a fictional character who didn't exist at all. And so from the evidence of history and archaeology, it doesn't seem to support the Exodus happening. And for the other things you mentioned, there seems to be better scientific evidence supporting the naturalist physicalist hypothesis for both the origin of life and consciousness.
Yes. Luckily, absence of evidence is not evidence. But that's a weak answer of mine. I agree with you.
Well, actually, it is.
Evidence...
Can I give you an example really quick? So if I say, like, I have a cup and I say there's no water in this cup. Well, if I look and I see a lack of water in this cup, the absence of evidence of water is evidence of absence of the water. And so if there was...
Absolutely.
So if there was like archaeological claims that there was a massive population of people who moved from one place to another, then in every other case in human history where we see this, we see pots and geological structures and homes and things that are left behind. Like with Native Americans, we see this kind of transitions all the time. But if that doesn't exist, then that is good reason to believe, like in the water example, that it didn't happen.
Well, you're familiar with that lead tablet that was found recently in a place that was traditionally thought to be where Joshua entered the land. But it hasn't been... I can't use that as evidence yet because it hasn't yet had peer review on the validity of its finds. So, but it was made huge news here and in the theological community, where this tablet, which was found in what's called Joshua's altar, but it doesn't, in any event, it has the explicit name of God written out 4 times in it, and it dates back to that. According to the original studies, it dates back to the time of the Exodus. If that is the case, it'd be amazing. If it's not, then it's insignificant. You're correct. I agree with you. The data are not there. I can't argue against that at all. Does it make me think that it didn't happen? No. I have my prejudice that I think there are data, but I do not have proof, but I see proof in the current world that things have happened. If the central existence of the state of Israel. I mean, it doesn't make sense the way that this country is just everywhere. I mean, there's no place hated more or sought more than these few kilometers of land. And that's, if you take that the text claimed that this would happen, which it does. If you have to take the text there, the text claimed that this would happen. It would happen. If it could, the sea split, could a wind split the sea? The answer is yes. I have a publication right here that the
Reed Sea, I believe, the Reed Sea that happens.
Our oceanographic explanation, the journal of American Journal, the highest level of meteorological publication. Oh, yeah, 40-mile-an-hour wind would split the sea there. Why were the Scud missiles so low? There's an interesting article in the journal Nature, one of the two leading journals. Why was it was interested in Nature so much that it has a full-length article, and the only explanation they can have, luck. 4 times in the article they say it's pure luck, and this is exactly what in the God Delusion, by Dawkins. Huh?
Dawkins, Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, by Dawkins, in the God Delusion. How does he describe the origin of luck and then of life, and then jumps on luck? Those are his words. And the nice thing of having it online is you can just search for the word luck, and it comes up 3 or 4 times. And one is on the origin of life. A lucky
coincidence,
lucky moment. So I don't think there is a physical explanation for the origin of life. There's a book out called The Return of the God Hypothesis, in which Tom Myers puts together many arguments. They've all been stated, most of them stated before, of the difficulty of having the stages of life occur that would lead from non-life to life, from non-conscious life, because the consciousness is what really makes the problem, it seems.
Well, yeah, so I would agree that that's a big unsolved problem in science. But like all unsolved problems, the fact that we don't have a solution yet isn't in and of itself evidence of a designer. That would be a god of the gaps. Like, I agree that it's a very hard problem to solve of how do we go from life or non-life to life. But the people who are successfully predicting things about this process and getting it correct before we know it isn't the design hypothesis. It's the abiogenesis hypothesis. And so I think that the better explanation isn't the one saying it's really, really hard, we don't know how to do it. It's the one saying, let's make progress, and here's a discovery that we've made that actually gets us closer to solving an answer. That whichever side is doing that is probably the one that's more likely to be correct than the one who's just simply saying it's really, really hard.
No, well, yes, there was a conference about 2 or 3 months ago in which persons who are working totally in origin of life studies keep coming up to a wall that stops them. It is not that the persons are not searching for this. It is being searched, but we are both on ground in which we have to make some kind of a leap of faith. You also, Tom, have to make a leap of faith to say that eventually it will be found. And I would say eventually we will find it, and that will be a 3-letter word. Okay, there will be things that enter into tweak the system, okay? But I don't want to use it as the god of the gaps until there is no way of finding the gap to be closed in the amount of time that we have in the world on the earth, actually, because life starts very rapidly on the earth, doesn't it? It's rather quickly that that occurs. Unfortunately, I can't read all the comments because somehow my screen, I'm sure if I click something, I need my grandchildren here to get me.
You can ignore the comments. The comments are just the people watching, commenting.
Oh,
so they're not,
okay.
it's not
No,
me.
look,
I'm not writing the comments.
I think it's great that you have this really interested following, that people take the trouble to write into you. It's call it the vote.
Thank you.
Call it the vote means all the honor to you that you've created a platform that has so many devoted listeners that would take the trouble to write in. So it's a great
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Work.
I did want to bring up where you mentioned that the origin of life researchers are hitting a wall. I don't know what wall they're hitting because I see them knocking down walls all the time. For example, it was an appealing idea to think of there were RNA replicators that had no need for proteins. And this was a hypothesis back in the 1960s, and it wasn't discovered until 1982 in a specific kind of organism called Tetrahemia thermophilia. And that was a bizarre single-celled organism that had 7 sexes that was able to have RNA replicators with no need for proteins. And this is one example of a progress that was made in the field by abiogenesis researchers. This is one of dozens of examples. I'm on an article from the newscientist.com where they are listing all the articles that were published in academic journals of progress in this field. And this was one example of something they discovered of a natural process that was able to solve one of the problems. And so I don't see that there's this wall that the abiogenesis researchers are hitting. They just keep making progress. It's just little bits of progress at a time. And obviously trying to go from non-living to living organism is tens of thousands of steps. And so they're not going to be able to do that all at once. But they are continuously making progress, solving one step at a time. And they have been since the 1960s. And so I don't really see these walls that you're talking about that the abiogenesis researchers are hitting. They seem to be making significant progress every year. And that's why I think that it's not a faith-based claim that this is going to be discovered. I think it's an inductive claim that because they're making consistent progress, they are probably going to be able to solve this field more so than the alternative, which has not been able to make the same level of progress of the intelligent design hypothesis.
Look, we're both assuming they will, or that you're assuming that eventually they will. I see, at least from the conference that I went to, which had persons who are absolutely in favor of evolutions having problems with getting beyond the position that in which they are. So we're both making assumptions on this. I say that I look around the world and I see things that imply to me that there is something working that is bigger than the physical, and that's an assumption on my part. I cannot prove it. There was a huge statistical survey of again when for some crazy reason we started getting bombarded in the first Gulf War, and the journal Nature was so intrigued that it wrote, why were the Scud missile crises numbers so low? They say luck, but it's possible to do a statistical study of why there were so few, because the nature of the bombing was known from the war between Iran and Iraq, and it's way beyond statistical in a scientific journal that would say that this happened by chance. It's just way beyond. Okay, does it prove that it was a hand of God? Obviously it doesn't. Does statistically it prove that it wasn't by luck? Yes. Accepted statistics says it wasn't luck. Okay. It's outside the range of luck.
You said you live.
I can't tell you.
You said you live in Israel, right? So in Israel, there are thousands of rockets launched from both Israel and Palestine every year, and the number of casualties is relatively low. I think it's less than less than 5% of the actual rockets hit anybody. Most of them hit empty dead space and do nothing, right? And so what's the difference there between the Scud missiles that you mentioned and the Israel-Palestine conflict? Most rockets don't actually hit anything unless you have like laser guided modern technology. Most of them are going to just hit open land.
Well, we have thousands of rockets landing, but we do have the what's called the Iron Dome, which tracks the trajectory of the missile, and if it's aiming towards a populated area, rockets are fired at it to destroy it. If it's aiming towards an unpopulated area, it allows it to continue and blow up in a field. So there's something that skews those numbers. Well, okay. Where can we go from here? I'm trying to think of how I can't prove, and I don't think that you have proven to me, and you haven't proven to me that it's all random, and I haven't proven to you that it's not random. That's not true, Paul. The Iron Dome works magnificently. Since I'm familiar with some of the statistics that you're not because of my connections with the government.
Well, I did want to ask a question. And in the case of why I think the naturalist hypothesis is better for origin of life is because if you have two people who have two different theories and one of them doesn't make progress in the field, but the other one is making progress continually, don't you think it's more rational inductively to think that the guy who's making progress is the more trustworthy one, the one that is more likely to have access to the knowledge than the one
Absolutely
who
not,
isn't?
because not from your regard, because it's using the laws of nature. The laws of nature we have like the laws of nature creating the universe. If you look at this Scientific American from several years ago, it's so embarrassing. Exactly on your article, on your argument. The fact is that the laws of nature are tuned for life, so much so that the cover was infinite Earths and parallel universes really exist. Okay, so I bought the journal. And then what does it tell me? We don't have the lights on here, so I really can't see this too well. But I'd like to read it here. Let me get my glasses on. Maybe I can, with this dim light here. Let me turn the light back on, see if it's still on. Right.
That's good. That's fine.
Is that okay or not?
Yep, that's fine. Go ahead.
Not terrible. Here's the argument of the most widely read science journal, not the best, but the most widely read science journal in the world. Cosmologists infer, here we're being told that how do you explain the world? There are many worlds, and we're just happen to be in the good one. Infinite Earths and parallel universes really exist. Here it is, direct text. Cosmologists infer the presence of parallel universes by scrutinizing the properties of our universe. These properties, including in the list of forces of nature and how they overlap here, beautifully done. And they say, and a number of space dimensions, time dimensions were established by random processes during the birth of the universe. Yet they have exactly the values that sustain life. That suggests the existence of other universes with other values that don't sustain life. I mean, that's so stupid. It's embarrassing that it got by the editors. The fact that our universe is tuned for life tells us that there are other universes that aren't tuned for life. The fact that our universe is tuned for life, that's all it tells us. If you look at the very beginning of the universe, the mass ratio between protons and electrons, that's the only thing that allows life to occur. And it's so bizarre. Why would an electron have the same charge as a proton, but its mass is almost 2,000 times lighter? You can say, well, that's because, this and that and the other. Yes, that's because this, that, and the other. But that's what allows molecules to form. And that's a lot of life. And that's what the Scientific American journal has a problem, because it has a very materialistic view. The universe is tuned for life. That's a given. The only way that they find that they can get around that tuning being by chance is that there are other universes, which we can never contact, of course, because there are other universes, which have other laws of nature. Instead of having time and space, they have Ugaldi and Zagaldi, or maybe Boogaldi and Dagaldi. Words that we don't even know about because we can't conceive of them. So our universe is tuned for life. That might allow life to arise by itself, although all the data seem to exist, at least as of the moment, that it takes a lot. It seems statistically unlikely, but that doesn't prove that it didn't happen by chance. Although Dawkins says it was a stroke of luck. What am I saying? The universe is tuned for life right from the beginning. Did it require a tuner? The scientific community says no, because there are other universes, probably. But since we can't contact other universes, then we're stuck with our universe.
Oh yeah, so I absolutely agree in the fine tuning. If we increased the gravitational constant even slightly, everything would have collapsed into a black hole. If we decreased it even slightly, everything would have flown away from each other, and no, there'd be no particles, no planets, no suns. So yes, there are 126 constants in physics that if they changed even slightly, life wouldn't be possible. So I definitely agree that fine tuning is a thing. But the things that could explain that are a designer is one possibility, random chance is another possibility, but also necessity is a possibility. So it could be the case that there's some
what was it?
necessity.
Necessity.
So it could be the case that there's an undiscovered law of physics that actually intertwines all of the known laws of physics. This is one of the hypotheses about the fine structure constant. The fine structure constant, the 1/136 or whatever, is a number that keeps coming up in relationships between the different laws. And this could be indicative of there being a law that actually causes a proportional relationship of the known laws, which is what results in this fine tuning. And when comparing these hypotheses, the unknown law of physics one seems to be a better hypothesis than a god because of the difference between discovered properties and asserted properties. A discovered property is something that we can show exists, like verify it through kind of scientific research that exists independent of our imagination. An asserted property is one that hasn't been able to do that. So the properties in string theory, for example, or the multiverse hypothesis, are two things. There's two things that are in that theory. One is Goose early universe inflation, which was confirmed in observations of the CMB, the cosmic microwave background radiation. And the other one is energy density of virtual particles, which is confirmed in the Casimir effect, which is another experiment we can do. So both of the parts of the multiverse theory have been discovered, but none of the parts of God have been discovered. Omniscience, omnibenevolence, mind outside of space-time. I don't know which properties you would prefer to describe God with, but they haven't been discovered in physics, whereas the parts of the multiverse have been discovered in physics. And so this as an explanation of what caused the fine-tuning seems to be a better, more plausible explanation than God, because all of the parts have been discovered, whereas none of the parts of God have been discovered. They're all asserted parts. And so it's like saying, what caused the hoof print in the snow? Well, a horse would be a better explanation than a unicorn, because all of the parts of horses have been discovered. Unicorns are still undiscovered. And so horse is probably a better explanation here. So I think that when looking at the fine tuning, the better explanation is either going to be something like the multiverse, because all of the parts have been discovered, or the undiscovered law of physics, like the fine structure constant, because both of those alternatives are based in physics. All of the parts have been discovered, whereas a God hypothesis adds in a bunch of things that are asserted but not discovered, like it's a mind outside of space-time.
That's the best. If you take the fact that existence is natural, I don't mean the universe. I don't mean our universe. Just existence of any kind, and then we can find the laws of physics can produce our universe, and other laws can produce perhaps another universe, laws we don't even know about. But if you take existence as being surprising, that there is existence, then I think it does require some kind of understanding. Why is there, I don't want to say Tom and Jerry. My English name is Jerry. And there was a cartoon. Are you aware of that, Tom?
Yes, the cat and the mouse.
Tom and Jerry?
Yep.
And when I came across it, I just thought it was kind of cute that we're having this debate. And it's very much like that. I haven't studied the cartoon very much, but there was this. So maybe it's what they say, berserk, that we should have the discussion, although you've had many other discussions with other people that weren't Jerry. But this is kind of nice. In any event, if you take the fact that existence, it's existence. It's existence. It exists. always, whatever that means, I have no idea that existence exists always, but it sounds like existence, that physical existence is eternal. That is a huge leap of faith, but that is your leap of faith. The physical existence of any sign. I don't mean our universe. I mean the whole kit and caboodle, multi-universes. That multi-universes are eternal. That's a total leap of faith. And I would say that is no less of a leap of faith of mine than saying, I don't know what physical existence is all about. I do know that parts of this physical world are unexplainable in physical terms as of yet, obviously. But those terms are like consciousness, etc., how it arises and how we experience light and sound when there's nothing in the physical world that is light or sound as we experience it. So I think we are both on a platform in which we have to make a leap of faith. And the leap of faith for me is that physical existence has to be explained somehow. Why is there physical existence? And I can't explain that in physical terms because that'd be ridiculous, to try to attain physical existence in physical terms. So I have to explain it in non-physical terms. And the alternative is to assume that existence is eternal, that there are multiple universes, but that's a leap that can never, at least as we understand physics at the moment, that's a leap that can never be determined because we can't see out of our universe if there is an outside of our universe to see other universes. Anyway, so I think as we draw this to, it's after 6, as we draw this to a conclusion, I think we both have leaps of faith. And I'm glad to see, someone pointed out to me, and I'd thought of it before, actually, the very fact that you're in this discussion of atheism or not atheism is much greater and more significant than a person that just says, I don't care. I mean, in a human relationship, the greatest would be having love for one another. The worst would be total indifference to another person, not hate. Hate already shows that there's a relationship, but indifference shows that it's worse than that. Indifference is worse. The fact that this is part of that you have devoted lots of hours of your life to argue, trying to demonstrate your relationship of how you assume the world works, shows that you have, to me at least, inside of you some aspect that is arguing with God. Not that it's indifferent, because if indifferent, you wouldn't waste your time on it would be a waste. You'd be wasting your time on this if you were indifferent to God. But the fact that you have this argument, I have to say, Tom, makes me very happy. and maybe that sounds strange, but it does actually gives me joy, actually. And that's a great gift. You've given me joy. And you have also challenged me with arguments that I don't have answers for. There's no answer. There are answers that we don't have for. You want to talk about the Bible's flood? Luckily, from the wording of the text, which is never brought up, shows that it's a local flood, but which could have happened, but certainly we see some things for a local flood. Leave the flood out of this whole thing. Okay. Thank you. And I have to go now because I have another obligation, but do you a wrap-up statement, or what?
Yeah.
What's your pleasure since the first time I met you?
Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Do you want to give any links or references where people can find more about your work?
Well, there's if you just go to GeraldSchroeder.com, there are essays talk about the age of the universe. I saw one of the chats asked about the age of the universe. The universe there are two perspectives of time. The Bible sees the perspective from time looking forward. that's one of the things I put my books on the bestseller, the physics that shows that looking back in time, the universe is about 14 billion years old. But if you looked at it from the beginning, based on the redshift, the expansion of space and the stretching of time, the redshift, it would come out to about 5.5 or 6 days. You would project the time back in time from the huge universe, and going back, the redshift would compress. It's not a trick. This has been my approach has been studied by lots of Nobel laureates in astronomy, and it's just bizarre that the stretching does change 14 billion years back into about 6 days. Actually, 5.5. It's embarrassing. It's exactly 5.5 days. So each of the but that, or you can find that on my website, GeraldSchroeder.com, and there's a list of books there, etc. And there's essays. And if you have a chance, Tom, I would actually greatly appreciate if you have time to look at Gerald Proof of Garden 5 minutes. Schroeder, that gets you to it on Google, gets it right to you, and the argument that's there. I would very much appreciate if you have time just to send me 1 or 2 sentences saying what how you the problems that you find with that. I would be beholden to you.
Absolutely. So, I will do that for sure. Thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I enjoyed the conversation and the debate. And we're both struggling with exactly the same. Well, I think we're both struggling with the same question. Isn't there something in the world that's bigger than people? Ciao.
Talk to you later. Bye.